The point is that you can be funny, charming, and kind, and be in love with somebody of the same sex. What's the role of the law here? We're not talking about an academic discussion. A lot of this is religious.
For decades, Lindsey Graham presented himself as one of the Republican Party's strongest conservative voices, especially on issues involving traditional values and LGBTQ+ policy debates.
What I want to do is protect the religious liberties of those who believe that opposing same-sex marriage is part of their faith. So no, I would not engage in the constitutional amendment process, accept the court's ruling.
But while he publicly supported positions that often opposed LGBTQ+ rights, persistent rumors and speculation about his own personal life followed him for years. Were these claims nothing more than political attacks and internet gossip? Or did they reveal a deeper contradiction between public image and private speculation? Today, we examine the controversies, unanswered questions, and political tensions that have kept this mystery alive for decades. The conservative image. For nearly 3 decades in the United States Senate, Lindsey Graham cultivated a reputation as one of the Republican Party's most recognizable conservative voices. Representing South Carolina since 2003, he became closely associated with national security, military policy, judicial appointments, and traditional conservative values. Whether appearing on cable news, speaking on the Senate floor, or campaigning across the country, Graham consistently presented himself as a defender of the Republican platform and someone willing to take strong positions on controversial issues. One area that defined his public identity was social policy. Throughout much of his Senate career, Graham publicly opposed same-sex marriage and supported legislation and judicial nominees that aligned with socially conservative viewpoints. Those positions earned him praise from many conservative voters while drawing criticism from LGBTQ+ advocacy groups and political opponents. His voting record and public statements became central to the image he projected throughout Washington. As national attitudes shifted over the years, Graham largely maintained his conservative messaging even as many Republicans softened or changed their positions on certain social issues. He frequently emphasized religious liberty, constitutional interpretation, and the importance of preserving what he described as traditional institutions. Supporters viewed him as consistent in defending his principles, while critics argued that some of his positions placed him on the wrong side of changing public opinion. That carefully crafted public image became one of Graham's defining political assets. Regardless of whether voters agreed with him, they generally understood where he stood on many of the country's most debated issues. Television appearances, committee hearings, and campaign speeches reinforced the same message year after year, helping establish him as a familiar figure in national politics. However, public figures often discover that reputation can be both an advantage and a vulnerability. As Graham's profile grew, so did public scrutiny. Over time, internet speculation, political gossip, and unverified rumors about his private life began circulating online. None of those rumors have been substantiated with verified evidence, and Graham has not publicly confirmed the claims. Even so, they became the subject of frequent discussion across social media and political commentary. For critics, the existence of those rumors created an opportunity to accuse Graham of hypocrisy because of his well-known conservative positions. Supporters, meanwhile, dismissed the speculation as politically motivated attacks lacking credible proof. As a result, 2 very different narratives developed around the same public figure. One focused on his legislative record and conservative advocacy. The other centered on persistent online speculation that remained separate from any verified public finding. Whether viewed as a principled conservative or a polarizing political figure, Graham's public image became one of the most recognizable in modern American politics. Yet that image would later face increasing scrutiny as long-standing rumors resurfaced and attracted renewed attention. Those developments would become one of the most talked-about aspects of his public story, setting the stage for controversies that extended far beyond traditional political debate. Yet, the public image was only half of the story. because an unusual nickname would soon spread through political circles. The Lady G rumors. Few modern politicians have been followed by persistent internet rumors, quite like Lindsey Graham. For years, online discussions repeatedly referenced the nickname Lady G, a label that spread across social media platforms, anonymous message boards, podcasts, and political commentary. Despite its widespread circulation, the nickname was never supported by publicly verified evidence connecting it to Graham, and no independent investigation established the claims that often accompanied it. The speculation largely existed in the world of political gossip. Every few months, the topic would resurface, fueled by memes, viral posts, or discussions among commentators. Supporters dismissed the rumors as partisan attacks designed to embarrass a high-profile Republican senator. Critics, meanwhile, pointed to the nickname as part of a larger narrative they believed deserved public attention. The result was a cycle that repeated itself for years, with each new wave of online discussion generating headlines before gradually fading again. One reason the rumors endured was the internet itself. Social media has a tendency to preserve stories long after traditional news outlets move on. Once a rumor becomes widely recognizable, it can continue spreading regardless of whether new information emerges. In Graham's case, the nickname became familiar even to people who knew very little about its origins. During this time, Graham didn't really go out and publicly engage with the speculation, not in any sustained way, nor in the kind of detailed back-and-forth people wanted. Instead of answering every online claim straight on, he mostly kept doing what he was already doing: legislative work, television appearances, and the usual political priorities. That choice is pretty typical for public officials. A lot of them end up deciding not to boost unverified talk by tackling each rumor like it's a separate item. Still, the lack of a direct response also meant the rumors didn't just fade out completely. For some observers, the silence was just a signal that he didn't want to legitimize internet gossip. End of story. But for others, it turned into more of the mystery itself. Without clear answers, speculation kept filling that empty space, kind of like it was supposed to. It matters to separate what's widely talked about online from what's actually verified as fact. Rumors can be extremely visible while also being wrong, especially once they get echoed across thousands of posts, clips, and videos. Even if people say they recognize a nickname, that alone doesn't prove the truth of what people attach to it. And somehow, that distinction got lost as the conversation shifted more and more toward social media momentum instead of documented evidence. No matter how you look at it, the Lady G nickname became one of the longer-lasting pieces of political folklore around Lindsey Graham. It showed how an unverified story can slide right into a public figure's reputation just because it keeps repeating, and it keeps getting attention online, even when there isn't any solid, substantiated proof. Then years later, a new allegation surfaced that reignited the entire conversation. The allegations that went viral. For years, the rumors surrounding Lindsey Graham largely remained confined to political gossip, social media discussions, and internet speculation. Then a new wave of attention dramatically reignited the conversation. Following reports of Graham's death, several individuals used social media to share personal stories and allegations they claimed had never been discussed publicly before. Almost overnight, the topic returned to trending discussions across multiple platforms. One post, in particular, spread rapidly. The author, identifying themselves as a former intimate worker, claimed to have had a private encounter with Graham years earlier and alleged that his private behavior differed significantly from the conservative public image he had maintained throughout his political career. The post attracted enormous attention, generating thousands of shares, screenshots, reactions, and commentary within a matter of hours. It is important to note that these allegations remain unverified. They have not been substantiated through independent evidence, court findings, or official investigations. The claims represent the account of an individual and should not be treated as established fact. As often happens in the age of social media, however, the speed with which the allegations spread far outpaced any effort to verify or disprove them. The timing also fueled discussion. Many online users argued that people who had previously remained silent now felt more comfortable speaking publicly because they believed the legal and personal consequences had changed. Others questioned the credibility of stories emerging only after Graham could no longer publicly respond. The debate quickly expanded beyond the allegations themselves and became a broader conversation about accountability, privacy, and the reliability of claims shared online. Political commentators soon joined the discussion, with reactions varying sharply depending on ideology. Some argued the allegations deserved serious attention and further investigation if supporting evidence ever emerged. Others dismissed the posts as internet rumors amplified by political polarization and emotional reactions. The same information was interpreted in dramatically different ways, depending on who was discussing it. The episode also illustrated how modern social media can transform individual claims into national conversations almost instantly. A single post can be copied, quoted, reposted, and discussed by millions of people before journalists or fact-checkers have time to evaluate it. By that stage, public perception is often shaped less by verified facts than by the sheer volume of online attention. Whether the allegations ultimately prove accurate, inaccurate, or remain forever unresolved, their rapid spread demonstrated the extraordinary power of digital platforms to reshape public conversations. In today's media environment, a single viral claim can become one of the defining stories surrounding a public figure, even when important questions remain unanswered. Whether true or false, the allegations immediately shifted attention toward Graham's long record in public office. Public politics versus private speculation. Throughout his Senate career, Lindsey Graham consistently aligned himself with many of the Republican Party's most socially conservative positions. On issues involving same-sex marriage, LGBTQ+ rights, and judicial appointments, he frequently voted in line with conservative priorities and publicly defended those decisions as matters of constitutional interpretation, religious liberty, or traditional values. Those positions became a defining part of his political identity and helped solidify his standing among many conservative voters. At the same time, years of online rumors and speculation surrounding Graham's private life continued to circulate outside the political arena. Although these rumors remained unverified, their persistence created a striking contrast that critics repeatedly highlighted. Opponents argued that if any of the speculation were ever proven true, it would raise questions about the consistency between Graham's public advocacy and his private life. Supporters rejected that argument, emphasizing that unverified rumors should never be treated as evidence or used to judge a person's character. This divide reflected a broader reality in modern politics. Public figures are often evaluated not only by their voting records and speeches, but also by stories shared online, regardless of whether those stories are substantiated. Social media has dramatically increased the speed at which speculation spreads, allowing allegations, jokes, and rumors to become part of public conversation long before any factual determination can be made. Political opponents frequently referenced the rumors when criticizing Graham's record on LGBTQ+ issues. Rather than focusing solely on legislation or policy, some commentators used the speculation to argue that his public positions appeared inconsistent with the image portrayed by internet gossip. Others cautioned against making that leap, pointing out that political disagreement should remain grounded in verifiable facts rather than assumptions about someone's personal life. This situation also pointed out a pretty clear distinction between critiques of public policy and the sort of claims people make about private conduct. And it kind of matters a lot. Graham's legislative record is already out there in plain sight, and it can be checked via speeches, voting histories, and official statements. Allegations about his personal life, on the other hand, still haven't been backed by verified public evidence, so you really can't treat them like something proven. When you blur that boundary, even a little, it can turn mere speculation into kind of assumed fact. which responsible reporting should try to avoid. No matter where folks stood politically, the gap between Graham's public stances and the ongoing online rumors turned into a bigger part of the wider talk around his career. Supporters read it as a sign of how easily political adversaries can weaponize gossip, and critics see it as a reminder of deeper worries around transparency plus accountability, even if everyone agrees that rumors, by themselves, do not establish truth. In the end, the whole debate revealed just as much about today's information ecosystem as it does about Lindsey Graham himself. In an era where online stories can travel globally in minutes, public perception is often pulled together from documented behavior, political rhetoric, and unverified speculation. Keeping those categories separate still feels essential when you're assessing any public figure, regardless of where someone sits on the political spectrum. But Graham's biggest transformation may not have involved his private life at all. The Trump transformation. One of the most remarkable chapters of Lindsey Graham's political career had little to do with legislation or foreign policy debates. Instead, it centered on a personal and political relationship that appeared to shift with surprising speed. Before Donald Trump entered the White House, Graham was widely recognized as one of Trump's toughest Republican critics. Within just a few years, however, he had become one of Trump's closest allies in the United States Senate. The reversal was so dramatic that it continues to be discussed as one of the most striking political transformations in recent American history. During the 2016 Republican presidential primary, Graham did not hold back in his criticism. He openly challenged Trump's rhetoric, questioned his temperament, and expressed serious doubts about whether Trump was suited for the presidency. In television interviews, campaign appearances, and public statements, Graham warned fellow Republicans that Trump's leadership style could harm both the party and the country. At one point, his remarks were among the most direct criticisms coming from within his own party, drawing widespread media attention and highlighting divisions among Republican leaders during the primary season. As Trump secured the Republican nomination and later won the presidency, many political observers expected the tension between the two men to continue or even intensify. Instead, their relationship began to evolve in an unexpected direction. Through a series of meetings, private discussions, and ongoing communication, Graham and Trump gradually found areas of agreement. By the early stages of Trump's administration, Graham had shifted from a vocal critic to a visible supporter, particularly on issues such as judicial appointments, national defense, and aspects of foreign policy. This transformation caught the attention of both supporters and critics across the political spectrum. Those who defended Graham's shift argued that it reflected a practical approach to governance. In their view, building a working relationship with a sitting president, especially one from the same party, was a way to influence policy outcomes and advance shared priorities. They pointed to common ground between the two, including support for increased defense spending, conservative judicial nominations, and a more assertive stance on international affairs. Critics, however, interpreted the shift in a very different light. They revisited Graham's earlier statements from 2015 and 2016 and compared them with his later praise for Trump. Video clips and interviews showing his past criticisms were frequently juxtaposed with more recent remarks in which he described Trump in positive terms. For many observers, these comparisons raised broader questions about political consistency, accountability, and the pressures that shape decision-making in Washington. Graham himself addressed the change in his stance on multiple occasions. He explained that his perspective evolved after working more closely with Trump and gaining insight into his decision-making process. According to Graham, shared policy goals and the realities of governing played a significant role in reshaping his views. Whether or not people accepted that explanation often depended on their own political perspectives and expectations of elected officials. Throughout much of Trump's presidency, the relationship between the two remained strong. Graham frequently appeared alongside Trump at rallies, press conferences, and official events, reinforcing his role as one of the administration's key allies in the Senate. During moments of political controversy, he often defended the president's actions and policies, further solidifying the perception of a close partnership. Whether seen as an example of political pragmatism, strategic alignment, or a notable reversal of earlier positions, Lindsey Graham's shift from one of Donald Trump's harshest Republican critics to one of his most reliable supporters remains a defining element of his career. It highlights how quickly alliances can change in modern politics and how evolving circumstances can reshape even the most firmly held positions. Even longtime political observers wondered whether ambition had replaced principle. Friends, rivals, and contradictions. Lindsey Graham built a reputation as one of the Republican Party's most outspoken conservatives, yet one of the more surprising aspects of his career was his ability to maintain personal friendships with political opponents. In Washington, fierce debates often unfolded in front of television cameras, but behind closed doors, relationships were frequently far more complicated. Graham became one of the clearest examples of how political rivalry and personal friendship could exist at the same time. Perhaps no relationship illustrated that contradiction better than his longtime friendship with Joe Biden. Long before Biden became president, the two men served together for years on the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. They traveled overseas together, negotiated legislation, and spent countless hours working on bipartisan issues. Despite belonging to opposing political parties, they developed a mutual respect that survived numerous political battles. Both men publicly acknowledged those differences. Graham regularly criticized Biden's policies on taxes, immigration, healthcare, and judicial appointments. Biden, in turn, frequently opposed Graham's legislative priorities and questioned many Republican initiatives. Yet, when discussing one another personally, both often spoke with warmth that surprised observers who only knew them through televised political debates. That ability to separate politics from personal relationships reflected an older Senate culture that has become increasingly rare. Lawmakers from opposing parties often socialized, traveled together, and negotiated compromises without viewing one another as permanent enemies. Graham repeatedly described those relationships as essential to governing, even during periods of intense partisan conflict. At the same time, Graham's political alliances evolved throughout his career. His relationships with fellow Republicans shifted depending on the issues before Congress. Some colleagues who were once close allies later became political opponents, while others who initially disagreed with him eventually became trusted partners. His evolving relationship with Donald Trump became the most widely discussed example, but it was far from the only one. These changing alliances sort of led some critics to question Graham's consistency. They would argue that his willingness to shift politically showed calculation more than conviction. And honestly, that wording, even if it sounds a bit harsh, was the gist. Supporters, however, reached the opposite conclusion. They said effective legislators should build relationships across different factions so they can actually influence policy and get something meaningful done. In their view, Graham's flexibility was more like political realism, not a contradiction. His career always seemed, to me at least, filled with unexpected pairings. One day, he could show up alongside Democratic colleagues talking foreign policy. Then the next day, he might sharply criticize those very same lawmakers during a Senate debate, like nothing happened, or like it never should have. Those quick shifts sometimes left the public confused, but that confusion fits the messy reality of congressional politics. Cooperation on one issue rarely means agreement on the next, or even something close to it. So whether he was admired for bipartisan friendships or criticized for changing alliances, Lindsey Graham ended up with a pretty distinct position in the Senate. He showed that public disagreements don't always erase personal respect, yet he also illustrated how political relationships can evolve, sometimes dramatically, over time. These tensions became, basically, one of the defining traits of his long career. And maybe that's why opinions about him stayed so divided across the whole political landscape. Then came the event that reopened every unanswered question almost overnight. The news that restarted everything. Whenever a major public event involves a longtime political figure like Lindsey Graham, old stories often find new life online. The same pattern emerged when reports concerning Graham began circulating across social media. Within hours, platforms that had been focused on current events suddenly filled with posts revisiting years of political commentary, interviews, viral clips, and long-standing internet speculation. Whether accurate or not, discussions that had faded into the background quickly returned to public attention, amplified by the speed and scale of digital sharing. Many users began sharing archived videos, screenshots, and articles from different periods of Graham's career. Older debates about his political positions resurfaced, alongside familiar internet rumors that had circulated for years. Some people revisited his evolving relationship with former allies and political figures, while others focused on his Senate voting record or previous television appearances. Long-forgotten political moments were suddenly viewed through a new lens simply because public attention had shifted back toward him. In this environment, even minor past remarks can gain renewed significance when interpreted in light of present-day narratives. Social media has fundamentally changed how public figures are remembered. In previous decades, conversations surrounding politicians often faded after news cycles ended, replaced by newer headlines and shifting public priorities. Today, however, old interviews, speeches, and online discussions remain permanently accessible. A single trending topic can encourage millions of users to revisit material from years or even decades earlier, creating the impression that past controversies have suddenly become new again. Algorithms further accelerate this process by promoting content that generates engagement, regardless of its age or context. As the online discussion expanded, some individuals also began posting personal stories and claims that they said they had never shared publicly before. These accounts spread rapidly across multiple platforms, with screenshots and reposts reaching audiences far beyond their original sources. In many cases, posts were reshared thousands of times within hours, often without additional context or verification. It is important to note that many of these claims remain unverified and have not been substantiated through independent evidence or official findings. As with many viral stories, the speed of online sharing greatly exceeded the pace of verification, leaving audiences to navigate a mix of information with varying levels of credibility. Some commentators suggested that moments of heightened public attention often encourage people to speak publicly, believing that larger audiences are finally listening. Others argued that viral moments can also encourage speculation and exaggeration, making it difficult to separate first-hand accounts from rumor or misinformation. The result was an online environment where documented facts, personal opinions, and unverified allegations frequently appeared side by side, sometimes indistinguishable to casual viewers. This blending of sources can shape public perception even before reliable information is confirmed. News organizations generally approached the renewed discussion with caution, distinguishing between Graham's well-documented public career and claims that lacked independent verification. Journalists emphasized the importance of evidence, sourcing, and accountability, especially when covering sensitive or potentially damaging allegations. That distinction is critical because widespread online attention does not, by itself, establish the truth of a claim. Public interest and factual confirmation are not the same thing, even if they often appear intertwined in digital spaces. Ultimately, the renewed attention illustrated how the internet preserves nearly every chapter of a public figure's life. Political speeches, television interviews, policy decisions, viral moments, and online rumors can all resurface within hours when a major event places someone back in the spotlight. In today's digital world, history rarely disappears. Instead, it remains archived, searchable, and ready to re-emerge whenever public curiosity is reignited, reminding us that the past is never as distant as it may seem. But beyond the headlines lies the larger question that continues dividing public opinion: why the mystery never disappeared. Few political figures have experienced the kind of persistent speculation that followed Lindsey Graham throughout much of his public career. While many controversies eventually fade from public attention, the rumors surrounding Graham continued to resurface year after year, often fueled by social media, political commentary, and renewed interest whenever he appeared in the national spotlight. Despite decades of discussion, however, no definitive public evidence has emerged to substantiate many of the personal allegations that circulated online. That distinction is important. Rumors, regardless of how widely they spread, are not the same as verified facts. Throughout Graham's career, internet speculation frequently outpaced documented evidence, creating an unusual situation where a public narrative developed alongside his official political record. One reflected his speeches, Senate votes, committee work, and policy positions. The other consisted largely of claims, jokes, memes, and speculation that remained unresolved. Even so, the rumors became difficult to separate from Graham's public image. For many observers, discussions about his career eventually included both his legislative record and the long-standing online speculation, regardless of whether the two were connected by verified evidence. That overlap demonstrated how quickly perception can become intertwined with rumor in today's digital environment. Political opponents often referenced the speculation when criticizing Graham, while supporters dismissed it as an example of modern political mudslinging. Both sides viewed the same body of online discussion through very different lenses. One considered it worthy of continued scrutiny, while the other regarded it as unsupported gossip amplified by partisan conflict. Without conclusive public proof either way, the debate remained unresolved. The broader lesson really goes past a single politician. These days, public figures are out there in this messy environment where information, disinformation, commentary, and entertainment sort of jostle for attention, all on the same platforms. A rumor, if it gets repeated often enough, can turn into something people recognize almost like a common fact for millions, even if zero new evidence shows up. Meanwhile, genuine questions sometimes just don't get answered, because speculation tends to sprint ahead of careful reporting. Lindsey Graham's situation shows this quite clearly. His political legacy will probably be filed away with lots of documented achievements and disputes, like his stances on national security, judicial appointments, foreign policy, and also the way his political alliances shifted over time. Still, it may also be tied to the persistent whispers that kept trailing him for years, no matter how unresolved or thin those claims are. So the lasting mystery, honestly, tells us just as much about the modern media scene as it does about Graham. Public identities are built slowly through speeches, campaigns, and years of political work. Online, though, narratives can start moving on their own, pulled by viral clips, casual speculation, and public curiosity, rather than verified proof. And once those parallel stories take root, it becomes harder and harder to sort out what's reputation from what's rumor. In the end, whether history emphasizes Lindsey Graham's legislative record, his political connections, or the swirling speculation about his personal life, there's one point that stays steady. In the digital age, unanswered questions tend to linger the longest. Sometimes the unanswered part is what people remember most, almost like it becomes part of the legacy, even when a final, clear answer never arrives. Whether viewed as political gossip, unanswered allegations, or a study in public image, Lindsey Graham's story continues to generate debate years after the rumors first emerged. What do you think explains why these claims have endured for so long? Let us know in the comments, subscribe for more political deep dives, and watch the next video on your screen for another story behind the headlines.